In the quiet town of Eldwood, nestled between rolling hills and a winding river, lived a young woman named Lila Sterling. At 25, Lila was the town's librarian, a role she cherished not for its prestige but for the stories it allowed her to protect. Eldwood's library was no ordinary collection of books. It housed the canon, a sacred anthology of tales that defined the town's history, culture, and identity. These were not mere stories but living narratives, believed to hold the essence of Eldwood's soul. Lila had grown up hearing about the canon from her grandmother, Ilara, who had been the librarian before her. Ilara would sit Lila on her lap and whisper, "The canon is our truth, our heart. To respect it is to respect who we are." As a child, Lila imagined the canon as a glowing book, pulsing with magic. As an adult, she understood it was more than that, it was a responsibility. The canon was a collection of 12 leather-bound volumes, each containing stories of Eldwood's founding, its triumphs, and its tragedies. The books were ancient, their pages yellowed but pristine, preserved by the librarians who came before Lila. The rule was simple: the canon was sacred. No one could alter its words, add to its pages, or question its truths. To do so was to invite chaos, to unravel the fabric of Eldwood itself. Lila's days were spent tending to the library, dusting the canon's shelves, and reading to children who gathered for story hour. She was content, her life woven into the rhythm of the town. But contentment, she would soon learn, was a fragile thing. One autumn evening, as the leaves turned crimson and gold, a stranger arrived in Eldwood. His name was Julian Voss, a writer with sharp eyes and a restless energy. He wore a worn leather jacket and carried a notebook filled with scribbled ideas. Julian had come to Eldwood chasing a story, though he wasn't sure what it was yet. He had heard rumors of the canon, whispered in literary circles as a relic of a bygone era, a collection so revered it bordered on myth. Lila met Julian when he wandered into the library, his boots leaving faint traces of mud on the polished floor. "I'm looking for the canon," he said, his voice carrying a hint of challenge. "I've heard it's something special." Lila stiffened. Outsiders rarely asked about the canon, and when they did, it was with reverence. Julian's tone was different, curious, almost skeptical. "The canon is not for casual reading," she said, her voice firm. "It's our history, our truth. Only those who respect it may see it." Julian raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at his lips. "Truth. That's a big word for a collection of stories." Lila's cheeks flushed. "They're not just stories. They're who we are." Julian leaned against the counter, his gaze steady. "Who decides that? Who gets to say what's true?" Lila didn't answer. She couldn't. The question lingered in her mind long after Julian left, promising to return. Julian did return, day after day, each visit chipping away at Lila's certainty. He asked questions she had never considered. Why was the canon untouchable? Who wrote it? What if it was wrong? His words were like pebbles dropped into a still pond, sending ripples through her thoughts. At first, Lila resisted. She quoted her grandmother's teachings, recited the rules of the canon, and defended its sanctity. But Julian was relentless, not with malice but with a genuine desire to understand. He shared stories of his own, tales from distant cities, cultures that clashed and blended, histories rewritten by those who dared to question. "Stories aren't static," he told her one evening, as they sat in the library's reading room. "They evolve. They breathe. Locking them away is like caging a living thing." Lila wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny the spark of curiosity his words ignited. She began to notice inconsistencies in the canon, small details that didn't align, dates that seemed off, characters whose motivations felt incomplete. She had always dismissed these as quirks, but now they gnawed at her. One night, unable to sleep, Lila crept into the library and opened the first volume of the canon. The story was familiar, the founding of Eldwood by a group of settlers led by a man named Amos Crane. According to the canon, Amos was a hero, a visionary who united the settlers against all odds. But as Lila read, she noticed something she had overlooked before, a passing mention of a woman named Mara, who had guided the settlers through a brutal winter. Mara appeared only once, her role downplayed, her fate unclear. Lila's heart raced. Why was Mara's story so brief? Why had no one questioned it? She flipped through the other volumes, searching for more references to Mara, but found none. The omission felt deliberate, like a thread pulled from a tapestry. The next day, Lila confronted Julian. "I found something," she said, her voice trembling. "A name in the canon. Mara. She's barely mentioned, but I think she was important." Julian's eyes lit up. "That's how it starts," he said. "One question, one crack in the foundation. Keep pulling at that thread, Lila." Lila's search for Mara became an obsession. She pored over the canon, cross-referenced it with other records in the library, and even dug through old town archives. She found fragments, letters, diaries, a faded photograph of a woman with fierce eyes and a determined jaw. Mara had been a leader, a healer, a voice of reason when the settlers faced starvation. Yet the canon had reduced her to a footnote. Lila's discoveries shook her. The canon wasn't just incomplete, it was curated, shaped by someone who had chosen what to remember and what to erase. But who? And why? She shared her findings with Julian, who listened with growing excitement. "This is bigger than Mara," he said. "This is about the canon itself. It's not truth, it's a version of truth, written by people with their own biases, their own agendas." Lila recoiled. "You're saying the canon is a lie?" "Not a lie," Julian said gently. "A perspective. But perspectives can be challenged." "They should be." Lila's world tilted. The canon had been her anchor, her guide. To question it was to question everything: her grandmother, her role as librarian, her identity. Yet she couldn't stop. The more she learned about Mara, the more she felt a connection to her, a woman whose story had been silenced. Word of Lila's research spread through Eldwood. The townspeople were divided. Some, like Old Man Harrow, who had known Ilara, were outraged. "The canon is sacred," he bellowed at a town meeting. "You're spitting on our ancestors." Others, mostly younger residents, were intrigued. They began asking their own questions, digging into their family histories, uncovering stories that didn't align with the canon. The library became a battleground. Lila received anonymous letters, some praising her courage, others accusing her of betrayal. One night, someone threw a brick through the library's window, the word heretic scrawled across it in red paint. Lila was shaken but undeterred. She felt Mara's presence, a quiet strength urging her forward. With Julian's help, she began writing Mara's story, piecing together the fragments she had found. It was a story of resilience, of a woman who had saved Eldwood but was erased to preserve Amos Crane's legacy. As Lila's work neared completion, the tension in Eldwood reached a breaking point. The town council, led by Harrow, demanded that Lila cease her research and destroy her writings. "You're tearing us apart," Harrow said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The canon unites us. Without it, we're nothing." Lila stood before the council, her manuscript clutched to her chest. "The canon isn't uniting us," she said. "It's hiding us from ourselves. Mara deserves to be remembered. We all do." The council voted to banish Lila if she refused to comply. Julian, who had become her closest ally, urged her to fight. "You're not just saving Mara's story," he said. "You're saving Eldwood's future." That night, Lila made her choice. She gathered the townspeople in the library, the canon's volumes displayed on a table. She read Mara's story aloud, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. When she finished, a young woman named Clara, whose grandmother had spoken of Mara, stepped forward. "I believe you," she said. "I want to know the truth." One by one, others joined her. They shared their own stories, tales of ancestors overlooked by the canon, of lives that deserved to be remembered. The library, once a shrine to the canon, became a space for new voices, new truths. Harrow and the council relented, not out of agreement but because they saw the tide turning. The canon remained, but it was no longer untouchable. Lila proposed a new volume, one that would include Mara's story and others like it, a living canon that could grow with Eldwood. Years passed, and Eldwood changed. The library became a hub of discovery, where people came to share and record their stories. The canon was still revered, but it was no longer a cage. It was a foundation, one that could be built upon, questioned, and expanded. Lila remained the librarian, her hair now streaked with grey, her eyes still bright with purpose. Julian stayed in Eldwood, writing books that wove together the old and new stories of the town. They never married, but their partnership was a quiet, unspoken bond, rooted in their shared belief in the power of stories. One spring morning, a young girl named Ilara, named after Lila's grandmother, visited the library. She asked Lila why the canon mattered. Lila smiled, remembering her own childhood questions. "The canon is our past," she said. "But respecting it doesn't mean worshipping it. It means listening to it, questioning it, and adding to it. That's how we grow." Ilara nodded, her eyes wide. "Can I write a story for the canon someday?" Lila handed her a blank notebook. "You already can." As Ilara ran off, her notebook clutched tightly, Lila looked at the canon's shelves. The 12 volumes were still there, joined by new ones, each a testament to Eldwood's evolving truth. She felt her grandmother's presence, not in the books but in the act of storytelling itself. Respecting the canon, Lila realized, wasn't about preserving it unchanged. It was about honoring its spirit by letting it live, breathe, and grow. And in that act, Eldwood found its truest self.